Principles Show daily podcast by and for you.
All right, everyone, ready for another deep dive?
I am. Let's get into it.
Today we're looking at Egypt.
Okay.
They're really making some big moves right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to become like a global investment hub.
Interesting.
So we're talking attracting capital, boosting trade, and really trying to transform their economy. The whole 9 yards.
Wow.
And we're basing this all off of an article from the BRICS joint website published just today, December 19th, 2024.
Fresh off the press.
Exactly.
All right.
So the article starts off with the Minister of Investment and Foreign Trade
Oh, wow.
presenting this new strategic vision to the Egyptian House of Representatives.
Ah, I see. So it's pretty serious. This is like a major announcement.
Yeah, it's not just like a casual,
Right.
tweet or something.
It's like, it's interesting that they're going through the House of Representatives.
Yeah,
I mean, that seems like a pretty big deal.
for sure.
In terms of signaling that they're serious about this and, they're probably trying to get some legislation passed to support these efforts.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
To get anything done, you've got to have the support of the House,
Well,
right?
of course.
So going straight to them is...
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It shows they're really committed to making these changes happen.
Definitely. And it's not just one single change either.
Okay.
The article outlines a whole bunch of different goals,
Like what?
like attracting capital, improving the business environment, streamlining processes.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly. It's like they're hitting every button at once.
I see. They're trying to create a sort of synergy between all these different areas.
Yeah, and that's what I found really interesting is how they're really emphasizing empowering the private sector.
Ah, so they're not just relying on government initiatives. They're looking to the private sector to really drive things forward.
Totally. They see it as like the cornerstone of this whole plan.
Yeah, and that makes sense. A strong private sector is essential for sustainable growth.
For sure.
Creates jobs, fosters innovation, attracts more investment.
Absolutely. And they're really hammering that point home in the article.
It seems like they understand that a thriving private sector can benefit both local and foreign investors.
Okay, so that's the big picture, right?
Right.
But let's get into some of the nitty-gritty detail.
Okay, let's do it.
Because the article mentions this two-phase financial reform plan.
Right.
And I got to be honest, I got a little lost in the weeds with some of the technical terms.
Yeah.
Yeah, like company deductions and modifying a solidarity contribution tax.
Yeah, those are a bit jargony.
Right. Can you break those down for us?
Sure. I think sometimes these economic terms can sound a bit intimidating, but they're actually not that complicated once you understand what they mean.
Totally.
So let's start with company deductions.
Okay.
It's basically a fancy way of saying that companies can reduce their taxable income based on certain criteria.
So it's kind of like a tax break.
Exactly. It's a way for the government to incentivize certain types of activities or investments.
I see. So it's not just a random discount they're giving out.
Right. It's strategic. For example, they might offer deductions to companies that invest in renewable energy or create jobs in certain sectors.
Ah, so it's a way to encourage companies to do things that align with their overall goals.
Precisely. It's all about using financial incentives to steer the economy in a particular direction.
Smart. Okay, what about this solidarity contribution tax? What's that all about?
So the solidarity contribution tax is essentially a tax that's used to fund social programs.
Oh, so it's kind of like a social security tax or something.
Exactly. It's meant to provide a safety net for citizens and support essential public services.
Okay, so when they talk about modifying it, what does that actually mean?
Well, it could mean a few different things. They might adjust the tax rate, making it higher or lower depending on their economic goals.
So they could tweak it to either encourage more investment or generate more revenue for social programs.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance between stimulating economic growth and ensuring social welfare.
That makes sense. It's a delicate balancing act, for sure.
It definitely is.
Right.
But, it's interesting how they're approaching it. It seems like they're really trying to create a system that benefits both businesses and individuals.
Yeah, it's not just a one-sided approach. They're thinking about all the stakeholders.
And that's a really important aspect of sustainable development, creating a system that works for everyone.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about tax breaks. We've talked about this solidarity contribution tax.
Right.
What else is in this plan?
Well, there's more. The article also mentions that they're aiming to streamline customs clearance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they want to cut down the time it takes to get goods in and out of the country.
I see. That's huge for businesses, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Time is money, as they say. Faster customs clearance means lower costs, quicker turnaround times, and ultimately, a more competitive business environment.
So they're really serious about making Egypt an attractive place to do business.
They are. And not just for domestic companies, but for international ones, too.
Makes sense. Okay, so they're simplifying the tax system, they're streamlining customs. Anything else?
Oh, there's one more thing I found quite intriguing.
Oh, what's that?
Well, apparently, a group of Stanford MBA students recently visited Cairo to explore Egypt's business climate.
Oh, wow. Stanford MBA students, that's not your average tourist group.
Right. It seems like Egypt is really pulling out all the stops to get noticed by the international business community.
Yeah, I mean, Stanford MBA students are like the future leaders of the business world, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are going to be making investment decisions shaping the global economy.
So if Egypt can impress them...
Well, it's a pretty strong endorsement. It suggests that they see real potential in Egypt's future.
That's pretty cool. So it's not just talk. They're actually walking the walk.
They are. And it's really exciting to see how all of this unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, if they can actually pull this off...
It could have a ripple effect throughout the region, and maybe even globally.
I know, right? It's like we're witnessing a real-life economic experiment.
Exactly. And it'll be fascinating to see what the results are.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. We talked about Egypt's ambitious plans to become a global investment hub. We've looked at their strategy for attracting capital, boosting trade, and empowering the private sector. And we've even touched on the potential impact this could have on the global stage.
It's a lot to take in, but it's clear that Egypt is serious about making some major changes.
Definitely. But you know, one thing that really stood out to me
What's that?
is this idea of Egypt as a potential model for other emerging economies.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
Like, if they can succeed, could other countries follow in their footsteps?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's one we'll be exploring further in our next deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started.
This is going to be good.
So if they can pull it off, Egypt could become like this example.
Yeah, like a model for other emerging economies.
Right? Like, hey, this is how you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, it's not just about economics. It's about, kind of a broader societal impact.
Right. Like, it could really improve people's lives.
Exactly. Think about job creation, poverty reduction, even political stability.
Right. If people have economic opportunities,
Yeah.
they're less likely to, resort to violence or instability.
Exactly. It's all connected.
It's fascinating.
It is. It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
One positive change can lead to another.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges they're going to face?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be managing expectations.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be a lot of hype, a lot of excitement, but it's important to remember that these things take time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And they're going to need to be patient and persistent.
And they're going to have to deal with like all the inevitable bumps in the road, right?
Of course, there are always going to be unforeseen challenges.
Right.
Whether it's political opposition or bureaucratic hurdles or just the sheer complexity of implementing such a large-scale transformation.
Yeah. That's like a giant puzzle with a million pieces.
Exactly. And they're going to need to be strategic and adaptable.
So you're saying it's not going to be easy?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But I think it has the potential to be truly transformative.
Yeah. If they can pull it off, it could be a game changer.
Absolutely. And not just for Egypt, but for the entire region.
Right. It could inspire other countries to follow a similar path.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so exciting. We're talking about the potential for a whole new era of economic development.
It's inspiring.
It is. And, it's important to remember that it's not just about governments and institutions. It's about people.
Mm-hmm.
It's about individuals making choices, taking risks, investing in their future.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's those individual stories that really matter.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about the entrepreneur who starts a new business, the student who gets a better education,
Right.
the family that has access to better health care.
Right. Yeah, those are the real measures of success.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is so powerful about this story. It's not just about numbers and statistics. It's about human potential.
It's about hope.
It is. And that's something worth investing in.
Well said. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the potential impact, but what about the risks?
Yes, the risks.
Are there any downsides to this plan?
Well, of course, every major undertaking comes with risks.
Right.
And in this case, I think one of the biggest risks is that things could move too fast.
Oh, interesting. So like too much change too quickly.
Exactly. If they try to implement these reforms too aggressively, it could lead to instability, economic or social disruptions.
So it's about finding that balance, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Pace and stability are key.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about the international community?
Well, the international community is watching this very closely.
Oh, yeah.
Egypt is a strategically important country, and its success or failure could have ripple effects throughout the region.
Oh, so everyone's got a stake in this.
Yeah. In a way, yes.
Wow. Okay, so it's a complex situation with a lot of moving parts.
It is, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
Right. It's like a real-life drama unfolding before our eyes.
Exactly, and we have a front row seat.
This is better than Netflix.
I know, right?
So what do you think? What's the most important thing for our listeners to take away from all of this?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that change is possible, even in a complex and challenging environment like Egypt's.
Right, so it's a story of hope and possibility.
Exactly. And I think it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
Yeah, whether it's through our investments, our careers, or just our everyday choices.
Right. We can all contribute to a more prosperous and equitable world.
Well said. It's interesting because we've been talking a lot about the economic side of things, but I'm also curious about the social impact. Like, how will all these changes actually affect people's lives on the ground?
Oh, that's a really important question.
Right.
Because ultimately, that's what matters most, right?
Right.
It's about improving the well-being of Egyptian citizens.
So do you think these reforms have the potential to do that?
Well, I think they certainly have the potential.
Okay.
If these reforms lead to more jobs, better education, improved health care,
Right.
then yeah, absolutely, it could significantly improve people's lives.
But it's not a guarantee, right?
Of course not.
There are always risks.
There are. And, one of the concerns is that these reforms could actually exacerbate existing inequalities.
Oh, yeah, like the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer.
Exactly. So it's really important for the government to implement these reforms in a way that is inclusive and benefits all segments of society.
So they need to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate in this new economy.
Absolutely. And, it's going to require careful planning and execution.
Right. It's not just about economic growth. It's about equitable growth.
Precisely.
And that's a much more complex challenge.
It is, but it's one that's worth tackling.
For sure. Okay, so we've talked about the potential benefits, the risks, the social impact. But I'm wondering, what do you think is the most likely outcome of all this?
Well, that's a tough question.
Yeah, I know. It's like looking into a crystal ball.
It is. But, if I had to make a prediction, I'd say that Egypt is likely to see some significant progress in the coming years.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're on the right track.
Okay.
They have a clear vision, a strong leadership team, and a commitment to reform.
That's encouraging.
It is, but, it's not going to be easy.
Right. There will be challenges.
There will be, and I think it's important to be realistic about that.
So you're saying don't expect miracles overnight?
Exactly. It's going to be a gradual process.
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. But I think it's a journey worth taking.
Well said. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on Egypt, what is the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that Egypt is a country in transition.
Okay.
They're at a crossroads, and they're making some bold moves to transform their economy and their society.
And it's a story worth paying attention to.
Absolutely, because what happens in Egypt could have ripple effects throughout the region and even the world.
So we'll be keeping a close eye on developments, and we'll keep you updated.
Sound good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me on this fascinating deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
Always a great conversation. And to our listeners out there, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We'll catch you on our next adventure. Until then, stay curious.